Hi everyone, and welcome to our show. This is Maria from Here Fashion Hub, and today I'm here with Ling Yah, my beautiful guest, a podcast lead and a founder of So This Is My Why podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with inspiring people about their journey to discovering and living their why, so that you can do the same. And today our topic is mystifying NFTs. But I will not take a lot of your time, and I will let Ling Yah introduce yourself. Who are you? How did you find yourself in this journey? Please.
So, hi, Maria. Thank you so much, firstly, for having me on as a guest. Very excited to share. Hopefully, it will be helpful for your guests. So, who I am, I actually grew up in Borneo. So, this is in Southeast Asia. I spent most of my life here before I went to England. That's where I studied, did law before coming back to practice as a litigator, specializing in IP, which is why there's tremendous relevance with what's happening with NFTs now. So, why I started this is because I realized after almost a decade as a lawyer, I thought surely there must be more than law out there because all my friends were lawyers, all the people I knew were lawyers, and I felt as though the world was so much larger, but I didn't know who they were, how to reach out. And at that time, I had just discovered this thing called podcast, and I realized that I was learning so much. I was being so inspired because there's one thing to read about a person's story, nothing to hear their story told in their own words with their own voice, with all the emotions in it. I felt so connected. I remembered so much. So I thought, well, since I have this question and I want to connect with people and there's the pandemic, why don't I just proceed with it? Artists, with those who are in the crypto space. And naturally, the conversations we had was very much in the realm of what's happening in Web3? Why should we get into Web3? And since I had this platform already, the question that came to me naturally was, well, why don't I start to interview people who are in the Web3 space? So if you look into my past interviews, you will see that I started in a sort of gentle way. I interviewed those who were NFT artists. So one of my very first ones, she was young. She was a young mother, pregnant, Muslim, last person in the world you imagine in this kind of techie space. But she also loved music. And so she created this fan account, reached out to the lead singer of Linkin Park. And she developed a relationship with him. Mike, she know that. Mike knew her, called her, said, I love your NFT. I love your art. If you create this art and turn it into an NFT, I will buy your NFT. And so she took a leap of faith. She minted it and he bought it. And that's how he started on that journey. So it's a really incredible thing. So I started with artists, I started with founders of NFT projects itself, and all the people there when I asked them the question, how did you first get into it? I am interviewing because you're considered an OG. Oh, how long ago were you in the space? And they said, oh, I only entered the space 1 month ago, but yes, I'm considered an OG. So it was such a strange thing to consider that, wow, this is so new that if you entered 1 month ago, you would be an OG. And so I just started going deeper and deeper. And now I'm starting to go more into the strategic side because I thought, okay, now I've interviewed the individual people who are entering the space. But what about those who have actually always advised on or being a part of large brands? The way they think, the way they operate is so different because the kind of inherent risk of taking a legacy brand with all your existing customers who've been you for decades and saying, hey, we want to hop onto this new trend, this new tech, and we're not actually ripping you off. It's just a new way of doing things. How do you convince them? How do you do it in the right way? That's what I was really intrigued by. And so that's how I started on that journey. And this is where I'm currently at now.
Okay, thank you very much. And so far, have you been enjoying this journey? I mean, of course you have. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't continue doing it. But how do you find it? Is it difficult to dive into the world of Web3 and not being, very into the specific of the field? Do you find it difficult to understand some concepts as well as NFT? We're going to speak later about it today.
I think at the start, because there are so many terms, it's little things like HODL. What is HODL? Hold on for dear life. What does that even mean? Why do you even want to do that? It was all these little terms that initially that throw you back. But then I started creating this document for myself, listing all the different terms. And over time, because you see everyone using it all the time, like for instance, the term GM. Why is everyone saying GM? It's evening. Why are you saying good morning to me? Little things like that. You get used to it and it almost becomes a part of your vocabulary. And you feel, and I imagine this is why people love Web3 as well, you feel a part of this inner circle because you get the language that most
Yeah,
people who
exactly.
haven't spent time in the space don't get as well. So it has been a journey, I would say. Now looking back, you after speaking to so many people, you see a trend. You kind of see the same kind of things that they do, kind of risks that they're taking on. And it's really not that hard, I would say. And it also helps because everyone acknowledges the fact that this is a new space. I'm also learning. And because everyone accepts that, they are also very willing to share and just break it down. So when I first started, I was asking everyone, what is an NFT? What is a DAO? But now you will never ask, you will never see me asking these questions because I would hope that you already know it by now, but back then, I didn't really understand myself. So over time, you can see that it's evolved. So it's overwhelming if you think you can learn everything. But if you just take it one little step at a time, it's really not that hard.
Exactly, exactly. I'm sorry for my audience because I'm still asking what is NFT? What is
No,
this
no,
specific
no, not at all. I
language?
mean, you see,
I'm still
what
understanding.
You see, what I like is that when I asked everyone what is an NFT, everyone gave me the different definition. And so that's what intrigued me as well. So I was also asking it a lot just to see how do you understand NFT? What is an official definition for you since you spent so long in the space? So there is no one fit rule. And I think that's very fascinating itself. And what's interesting as well is certain definitions might hit right for your guess. For instance, if I explain what an NFT is, they like half your people might not understand. But if someone else explains it in a different way from their context, they might get it immediately. So you never know. I think it's still an essential question.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and I think not the problem, but the nuance is that NFTs and a lot of different concepts in blockchain can be applied to different things differently, completely. One person can explain it from a perspective of art, like how NFT can be used in art. Others can explain how it can be used in business, like smart contracts, etc. It's a very, very widely spread, widely used thing. I will be, I hope, still not that widely used. So yeah, I totally get what you mean, but I'm gonna, let's say, be a bit more advanced, and I'm gonna ask you, what is IP or intellectual property, and what does it have to do with NFT? But really deep, deep concept.
So I will answer the second question first, which is how is it related to NFTs? I think if you have gone into any Web3 project, NFT project, you will probably have come across a phrase that sounds like you own all the IP in an NFT. And so the question then becomes, what do you mean by that? What do you actually own? What is an IP? So IP, as you said earlier, is intellectual property. And I've always found that personally to be a very frustrating statement when people say you own all the IP, because for what you're basically saying is IP is an umbrella term. Under IP, you have trademark, you have copyright, you have patents, you have confidential information. If your NFT is basically just an image, a picture, do you have a trademark? I really don't think so. Because to have a trademark, you must register it with your local trademark office. I highly doubt you've registered it if you are
Mhm.
buying an NFT for the first time. So there's no trademark. Copyright, maybe. Patent, impossible. Because a patent would require elements like industrial application, creative step. You actually invented something. There is no
Mhm.
invention with an NFT. You just bought
Okay.
the art. Then confidential information. The term itself explains what it is. It must be confidential. If it's not confidential, there's no confidential information. So when people say you own all the IP, you don't really own all the IP. You really are just owning the copyright, most likely. And
Oh,
it just feels as though the people were trying to sell and give this impression that you are earning so much more than you actually are when you are owning the IP. And also, I mean, there are more complications as well. For instance, in certain countries, just because you bought an NFT upon purchase, that doesn't mean that you own the copyright because you need to have a license. Unless you actually execute a license, there is no transfer of ownership. Therefore, you don't actually own the IP. So are there licenses? Not all the time. So there are all these different nuances that people, I think, are becoming more aware of, but it needs to just be a lot more commonplace.
Okay. Okay. I'm a bit puzzled because I'm not that much that good at legal aspects,
Tell me what you're
but that's
puzzled
why I'm
about, and I'll
asking
try
more
and break it
questions.
down.
But so then why do we need NFT? Like even if it doesn't simplify, if we don't own the IP, why do we need it?
So actually, I would correct that and say that it's not that you don't own the IP. You could own the IP. It's just more a question of you need to read the terms. You need to actually really see what kind of agreements are in place, because there are certain projects where they have definitely gotten legal advice. They have all the licenses. You can easily see what you really owned. But there are also many, many projects where a group of people just basically came around and said, I'm going to sell 1,000 images, and there is no other legal backing behind it. So that is a lot more dodgy. And I think that is something that people need to be more alert by. So you don't necessarily not own the IP. You just have to be really aware that it's a lot more complicated than just, I use some Ethereum to buy this image, and therefore I own everything associated with it just because the founder told me so in Discord. So it's more than that. I would say why you want to use NFT. So people will always say because it's new tech. And one of the most interesting things that I think people, especially in the fashion industry, are really excited about is the fact that you can use an NFT to know exactly where a certain product has come from. So why I
Mhm.
say that is because NFT is basically built right now on blockchain. And blockchain, the moment anything is put on it or mint on it, it's permanent. No one can ever change. So imagine if I own a Gucci bag, and I would say when you own this physical, it comes with the NFT. You can just trace the NFT to see exactly who issued it. If you know with absolute certainty this NFT was issued by Gucci, no
Yeah.
questions whatsoever, and then you then have a person come in and say, hey, this NFT is associated with this physical product. So if you buy, you own both. I think there is a lot more assurance you bought a genuine product as opposed to someone who went to the second-hand market and said, yes, this is definitely genuine. I have a certificate. I think that you can
Yeah.
verify it's authentic, but you just have to trust me, even though you don't have the expertise, you haven't spent decades trying to understand how to, interpret whether a particular bag is genuine or not. So in that sense, I think that's one of the most critical parts that people have found really helpful when he's using NFTs.
Mhm. Mhm. I see. I think it's especially important during the switch to a more sustainable consumption habit where people get more into second hand, or let's say not second, vintage things. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Completely makes sense. But what about then forging or duplicating NFT? Is it in any way possible? And what legal consequences can be there, or there can be no legal consequences anyway?
So that's a really interesting two-part question. So the first part is forging or duplicating. That's really easy because an NFT most of the time is linked to an image, copy paste. I mean, you can copy it, I can copy it. That's one of the big questions and why people always go against NFT, right? Why are you buying just a JPEG? Yeah, you are buying the JPEG, which is linked to this account, which you know comes from a reputable house. That's why you're doing it. And because of that linkage, you then have access to, say, all the exclusive communities that you actually want. So it's very easy to duplicate. And there have been many instances, many projects where, say, an artist wasn't in the NFT project space, didn't know anything about it, and so some other dubious characters really like her art, take it, upload it, pretend that they created this art, sell it out, and only much later does the artist, if it's they even realize it, find out about this project. And there's one particular one I remember called CryptoKitties. This is exactly what happened. The artist found out later that her art was being used by other people without permission to sell out. And when she tried to come in and say, hey, you didn't have permission to use my art, the community who had bought into that project fought back against her. And it was just this incredibly messy situation. And later on, the actual artist created her own project. But it just shows how easy it is for people to just take any image off and create it. And how can you mitigate against that? It's really hard. Anyone can just copy paste. The only way you can do is just to do your research all the time. And there is no hard and fast rule. You just have to be going in with eyes wide open that what you're looking at, a project founder could say is genuine, I created this art, but that might not be the case, or they might not have all the rights that they claim to have. So the question then becomes, how do you enforce? And that is something that so many people are struggling with as well. It's really, really hard because normally when you're enforcing in court, you can very clearly say, these are the people who did an infringing act. They did it in this country, therefore we're bringing this court case against them in this country. But in the Web3 space, you probably don't know who they are. They're probably on docs. They're probably some kind of wallet address or some kind of pseudonym that you can't trace at all. So it's very much a question that's up in the air. It's one of those reasons why people are also very wary of coming to the space. I could spend so much, could spend thousands, but what if something actually happened? There is no actual clear recourse. In Singapore, for instance, there was this one case where an NFT was, and it's a slightly different context, the NFT was stolen from one person to the other. And the judge actually said, you need to give the NFT back. But the big question after that judgment would then be, how do you enforce? How do you make sure he actually transfers it back? It's not like, there is a false transfer through a bank and the bank can then do something potentially to
Exactly.
bring to transfer the money back. There's no way. Once it's transferred, it's gone, it's gone. So it's a big question, and it's one of the big issues that we're all grappling with right now.
I see. I see. Yeah, of course, we are still not ready to meet all of the consequences that brings this innovation, and we are just learning how to do it. So I think there are a lot of blank spaces, both in the legal, business, and no, in any aspect connected with Web3 and its phenomena. But so, just an example to see if I understood it correctly. I can. I saw a beautiful NFT, but I didn't. I never bought it. But I saw a beautiful NFT on another page of another guy or girl who bought it, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna use this NFT to print on my T-shirt. Do I have the right to do it, or
I
I'm
would say,
infringing copyright?
I would say after that you probably don't have. I mean, it depends if the NFT was created based off CCO art, which is Creative Commons art, where basically, I mean, there are different terms, but the essential broad brush rule would be whatever is Creative Commons is fully license free. So anyone, everyone can use it in any which way they want. So if it's an NFT that is from Creative Commons, that's fine, it's not an issue. The problem then becomes if it's original and it belongs to someone else. Yes, I would say you definitely shouldn't do something like that at all because they could come after you. The question becomes who actually has the right to enforce and come after you? Would they want to do it? Those are questions that, as we spoke earlier, you have to drill down to the terms. But
Maybe.
essentially, I would say no, please don't do that.
No, I won't. I promise you I won't. But I think while we still have these legal gaps, somebody can use this opportunity because I mean, there are a lot of people in this world with different ideas and opportunities. So why not?
Yeah,
Not for me.
absolutely. They might think that it is worth the risk. I mean, yes, you might come after me, but in the meanwhile, let me make 3 million and run off and pay you a very small sum just for, the price of infringing your IP.
Okay. And so we were speaking before about counterfeiting, yeah, duplicating original, I would say Gucci bag, for example, duplicating Gucci bag. Would you think that uh, creating an NFT of a Gucci bag, not by Gucci but by some artist, is counterfeiting or duplicating it?
I would say no if it came. So it's counterfeit if, for instance, you come in and say, I'm creating Gucci bag, but you're not actually from Gucci. But if you're the artist and you say, I'm creating a bag under my own brand, then you have full rights to do whatever you want with it because it's your own brand. So there's no counterfeiting involved whatsoever.
But if I put a logo of Gucci, and I
Oh,
still create this
yes.
NFT.
If you put a logo on Gucci, then trademark infringement issues come into play for sure, and copyright issues. It's like any other issue when it comes to counterfeiting in real life for physical goods as well. In the real world, I mean, in the virtual world as well, the same rules apply.
Okay, okay. Oh my God, this issue is really, really tricky to tackle. I didn't expect it to be that interesting. So I will just come back to IP with one more question. Do you personally think or know if there are any steps towards ensuring like the, let's say, full package of intellectual property in Web3? So we are speaking about patents, trademarks, not only copyright.
So let me try understand your question. Are you saying that are there NFTs in the future where if you buy the NFT, you will also have the attendant, copyright, trademark, patent, everything associated with it?
Yeah, it can be also not NFT, like other any other options to ensure the full IP package.
I mean, it really depends on the nature of that NFT that's associated with it. For instance, the NFT naturally would probably have copyright. Trademark would exist if you registered in your local trademark office. So if you're selling an NFT and you say, "Hey, I've already registered this image in Italy," for instance, and if you buy this NFT, you will also get the trademark registrations I've already made. It's a lot more complicated than that, especially in, say, the UK or Malaysia, where there is a transfer and you have to pay a certain amount of fees to the agents, to the office. It's a lot more complicated, but the idea is that you potentially could. It's harder for a patent, as mentioned earlier, because a patent is more about a creation and invention. So if for some reason this NFT is related to an actual invention, then perhaps you could also have the patent, but it really depends on the nature of what you're offering.
Okay, so of course, this thing, NFT, IP, it is not a standard thing, and it can be applied in different terms. Let's say can be applied to different situations. So I understand it. Of course, I think it's a very very long talk about all of this, all
Yeah,
of
and
these terms. Like,
I should also qualify as well that please don't take this as legal financial investment advice as well.
no, for me, people from the legal sphere, like lawyers, etc., they're heroes because for me, it's the most complicated thing in this world. So I respect you a lot and
Oh,
thank you
that's
for
really
doing
sweet.
this.
I mean, I think it's not so difficult once you understand the basic principles, and I think it is worth the time to take. I mean, it's worth taking the time to really delve into it because it really would change the way that you see what you are paying for and what you think you're getting. So, yes, if you're looking to enter into the space seriously, I would take some time to just read.
Exactly, exactly. Just to make a small, let's say, summarization of our talk. If you buy an NFT, first read what you're buying, right? Like
Yeah,
any contract.
yeah, read what you're buying, see if there is an actual agreement in place, a license agreement. And if that license agreement, how is it enforced? Is it actually minted on the blockchain? Because otherwise there are certain, you see, this is where contracts can be really tricky. Sometimes there are terms I have seen as well in license agreement where they say that the party which created this NFT has the right at any time to change the terms of this agreement. That should send alarm bells ringing through your head because it doesn't matter what they say right now. If they have that term, that means at any point in time they can change everything. They could say right now when they're selling it, you own full rights. You have can do anything you want with it, commercialize it, and later on after they've sold out, they could then change the terms and say, hey, actually, you have no right to commercialize it whatsoever, and you can't do anything because that's the agreement that you signed on. So definitely, yes, make sure you read the agreements if there's
Oh.
any. If there's none, then be on alert.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe these situations where they write that the agreements can be changed whatsoever, This is the reason actually why some people believe that all of they talk about crypto, NFTs, and other blockchain or Web3 phenomena is they are just financial pyramids. But the
I
problem is,
disagree. I mean,
yeah,
I disagree in the sense that because these are not terms that are confined just to Web3. These are terms
yeah,
you can find in any agreement whatsoever. Anyone can put it in anything that you
yeah,
sign. And so if you're looking at any contract that ever comes across the desk, always make sure that term doesn't exist.
exactly. Exactly. So it's not crypto, Web3 or whatsoever. It's just common sense, and you need to read the contracts.
Yes, just read the contract, basically. Yes, if I could summarize everything.
The most important lesson in life. Great. As I promised, anticipated before, our previous guest, Markos, also podcast lead for Exchange, has asked our special guest, you, a question. A question would be, do you think that brands will soon fully accept full crypto payments?
I think the indications are that they definitely are moving to that space. So when Gucci accepted cryptocurrency, they made a huge splash. And now you see things like Off-White, Equinox, Philip Plain, they're all entering into the crypto space. And I think it's because you have to think about what money actually means. Money is whatever it could be. It could be even a seashell where people put enough value into it that they're willing to exchange it for something else. And I think crypto is more widely adopted than it ever was before. Big brands recognize it, they're going fully into it. And even though we're in a bear market, even though there are all these crashes, they haven't turned back on this decision. I don't think for brands so big as this that they make this decision lightly. So it seems very, very likely that we're moving to a space where it would be very common to use your Ethereum or even your Bitcoin to purchase your latest Balenciaga.
Thank you very much. I completely agree with you, and I also think we are slowly moving towards the full crypto payment direction, not only for brands, but in our everyday life. And I hope it will be not just a trend, but a common thing soon. So, I would thank you again, Ning Yah, for your time. It was a very nice talk. I give you the opportunity to ask our next guest any question you would like.
Well, my next question would be, what is the one NFT project in the fashion industry that you're really excited to see?
Okay, great. Great. I'm going to pass this question to our next guest, which I still need to be silent about. And I'm gonna let you know what he or she answers. And meanwhile, I thank you once again for your time. It was a very nice talk. You opened my eyes on several things, and I hope our audience enjoyed it as well. In any case, if there will be some more comments or questions, we will let you know. And I think would like you would be able to
Yeah,
answer all of the questions for our audience.
yeah. I mean, thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much,
much.
Maria. Thank you so much, Maria, for reaching out to me. Definitely happy to try and, take away some of the confusion and uncertainty. So feel free to reach out. I'll try my best to help. But obviously, it's not legal advice, it's just an opinion. But hopefully, I will steer you in the right direction so you know where to go and the questions to ask and issues to look out for.